So I'm Evan Dorn. I'm the founder of Logical Reality Design. It's a contracting company, same company Judson works for. We are always looking for gigs and we are always looking for new developers. A lot of our developers work part-time, so if you have a few hours on the side, you might want to try working with us. Just talk to me afterwards and get a business card. Anyway, so I wanted to talk for just a minute about some thoughts about testing that have been mulling through my head lately. They showed up after I was giving a presentation on testing to one of my clients and their engineering team. So let's just do a little exercise. Everybody be completely honest. So raise your hand if you write Ruby code. All right? Now leave your hand up if you write at least some tests for your Ruby code. Okay? All right, so only a couple hands went down. Leave your hand up if you almost always or always write tests for your Ruby code. Okay, a few more hands went down. All right, fair enough. Now, raise your hand or leave your hand up if you write your tests first before you write your code. Always or almost always. Okay, so very few hands are up. So this is what I do almost all of the time. I write my tests before I write my code. And you hear people talking about it. Test-first development, test-driven development, behavior-driven development. It all means roughly the same thing. And I've been doing Ruby for about 6 years now, and it was really 3 or 4 years in before it really kind of sunk in why this matters and why it's really important to me. And when I was preparing this presentation for a client's engineering team, because they were really kind of under-testing their code, I set up and I made all of the usual arguments about why we write tests. So give me some examples. Raise your hand. Why do we write tests for our code? What's a good reason for it? Anyone? Yeah.
Quality.
Quality? What do you mean?
That you have the confidence in it. Confidence in the code. It's not going to break when you add new stuff.
Right, and maybe you get, like, you know when something breaks. So, like, especially with a team, if one person breaks the other person's code, the tests are how you know, right? And then there's speed advantages and efficiency advantages. That means person A breaks person B's code, you catch it before QA wastes their time on it. Or you catch it before it goes out to production, or some of that sort of thing. And I was making all these usual arguments. But as I thought about it, I realized that something else mattered to me even more, which is that when I write a test before I write my code, that forces me to think about what I'm going to do before I do it, and it forces me to make a declarative statement about what my code is going to accomplish before I write the code. So everybody in this room is really smart. Like, just take that as a given. We're all programmers. You have to be pretty smart to program a computer. We all know that. That's actually pretty dangerous because smart people can keep a lot of things in their head and you can juggle a lot in the air. So you get this idea of what you're going to write and you just sort of dive in and you start writing because you can juggle it all in your head. But that means it's all kind of a mess up in your head. And it leads to, I found in my case, all these really long methods with tons of conditionals and things that interact, and often there's bugs that I don't catch until much later. And I found that when I'm writing a test first and I have to make a single statement, the test will do this. Then when I write that code, it's short, it's clean, and I'm very directed when I'm writing it. And that ultimately results in much better code, even if the test never catches anything in the future. And it took me 3 or 4 years to really realize this, so it's been kind of profound for me the last month as I realized, wow, that's actually what tests do for me more than catching problems, is they make me write better code if I write the tests first. And so I just wanted to come up here and say that, share it with you. Oh, hey, I've got like 1 minute left. That's pretty awesome. So that gives you an idea, something about the way we program. We are kind of idealistic about our code. We really like to write clean code. We really like to do a very good job and continuously refactor and do all that great stuff. So if you want to pick up on some of that or you want to experience some of that, drop us a line, pick up a business card, and maybe we can work with you.
Do you have to be in this time zone?
You do have to be local. We actually have, I don't know how strict that is. We never offshore. We have an absolute permanent policy against offshoring, but we have a pretty clear policy on liking to see our developers in person, face-to-face, at least once a week, preferably more. It's how we maintain team cohesion, even though we are a distributed company. So, anything else?
I'd like to add something. You talk about writing the test first and that helping you to think about it before you write the code. Mm-hmm. The other thing that you're doing as you're writing your code is you're making it testable, which usually means that you're making it modular.
Right.
It forces you, not to, it keeps you from going down this path of I'm going to write all this code, it does all these things, And it makes you stop and say, okay, I want to do this, but how do I make it testable? And
Right.
it forces you to be modular.
Right. And that's this happened with one of my clients, is he brought me over when he's like, I'm trying to test this method, and he was writing the test after the method. He's like, it's really simple, it's only 3 lines, but testing all of the output cases of it requires like 90 lines of tests. Like, that means your code isn't simple. It looks like it's simple because it's only 3 lines, but you've got nested conditionals there. That method is trying to do too much for one method. You need to break it up even if it looks short. And yeah, making your code testable and making yourself write the test for it is a good way to catch that kind of code problem.
You discover it before you write the code.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah?
Did you also let your tests, you derive your design from your tests? I know a lot of people who are in this test-driven, behavior-driven development stuff say, oh, well, I could go outside in, I'm trying to solve a problem, and I write a test to solve that problem, and then I create another problem, and I write a test to solve that problem, and you're essentially creating a design based upon solving your tests.
I would say an architecture more than a design. So the design of the site is driven by business needs. The design of what the code is supposed to accomplish in the end. But the architecture of how the code reaches that goal is, yes, I think is very test-driven.
And you don't find yourself saying, oh, geez, I did this really screwy design because I'm letting the tests lead me to the solution and having to go back and refactor a lot of things?
Not usually, but sometimes that happens. And occasionally I will find myself like sticking things in my HTML so that my tests can detect that stuff is on the page when it doesn't need to be there otherwise. That's also a code smell. When I catch myself doing that, that tells me that I'm kind of doing this the wrong way, and I need to look at my code and see if there's a better way to do it. But yeah, that is a pitfall, but it's also a good warning sign. If you catch yourself doing that, it tells you to take another look at how you're writing your code.
Yeah, because I hear a lot of people doing that, and to some extent it seems like you might lead yourself down a horrible path, and I guess like with anything, you have to be disciplined and recognize when you're going on that path.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. You had your hand up.
The case when you're writing a whole bunch of tests and then it takes a while is when you have to deal with combinatorial issues like, let's say I want to do a sort on a minimum of 6 items.
Right.
So I have to do different, I have to write a test for each and every one of those. Is there a way to kind of tighten that up?
I tend to try and spot check boundary conditions, right? So, I'll look for particular problem cases or particular edge cases and then do like one test of a common case plus the edge cases. I won't necessarily try and test every single combination because that can be really tedious and time consuming. You do have to be smart about how you write your tests. You can over-test. That is a real problem.
The rule of thumb we've used for combinatoric problems is to test pairwise things. So if you've got a chessboard made by a grid, make sure that every row by row, like every adjacent row and every adjacent column has a test. And you mostly will attempt to take the whole chessboard with much less than, I just tested essentially with